Welcome to Laugh, Cry, IEP, the podcast for moms with neurodivergent kids by Victoria Crisp. Victoria is a special education consultant and advocate with 20 years of experience on the school side and 5 additional years on your side. This is your journey, but you are not alone. Here, you'll learn, you'll be understood, and you'll find community. In fact, we'd love to have you join us in the Laugh Cry IEP community on Facebook. We'll tell you how at the end. Now, here's your host, Victoria Crisp.
Kelly, I'm so happy to be talking to you today. And we were just having a little bit of a conversation off record. And I said, what you're saying right now is so interesting. I was like, can I please just start recording? You were like, go for it. So pick up where you left off or start that sentence over again because it's so good.
Well, first, thanks for having me. You know, you're one of my favorite people on the planet. And I'll say that a couple of more times. It is game changer, Victoria, in our house. We were talking a little bit about an adopted child and a biological child and maybe what the different maternal feelings are towards both. Now, my boys are adopted, so I only have that point of view. And both of my sons were diagnosed at birth with neonatal abstinence syndrome, NAS acronym. And really that means that they were addicted to opioids when they were born. So both spent weeks in the NICU, both had to wean off of these opioids with methadone and phenobarbital, and it was just rough. Sure. So as my babies grow and they start to really inherit the symptoms of NAS, mostly around learning disabilities. And when you asked me as a mother, how does that affect you and how does that make you feel, especially as an adopted mother? And really, my primary way of thinking around this is anger. You know, I just get so mad. I get so frustrated that this poor baby did nothing to deserve this life, did nothing to deserve his brain being damaged, and now is a little creature in the world that needs lots of support just to function. Now, granted, he walks, he talks, he's toilet trained, he's funny, he's smart, but his whole life is really going to be focused around making sure that his brain starts to function better.
Yeah. And you were talking about a class that I wish all parents who have kids with disabilities would go to, talking about grieving the loss of the perfect child, because that is a real thing. Parents of little kids, when they find out that they have disabilities, and it can be any type of disability, go through a genuine grieving period. And whether it's grieving the loss of what you call a typical child, which honestly, what is a typical child? What does that even mean? Or the perfect child, which is, I guess, a good way of putting it. And can you talk a little bit about what you learned in that class and like what your feelings were about that?
Yes. So my older son goes to a therapeutic school, and one of the client partners there suggested we do this grief training. Think of grief and you think of, oh my gosh, you lost someone. And for my husband and I, it was really, again, like you said, the loss of the perfect child. We did IVF for years and years and years. We turned to adoption. We waited. We get this perfect, gorgeous baby boy. And we have to go through the grief of he's not perfect. And my husband grew up in a strict household and he just wants perfect little soldiers, listening, obeying. And that's just not what our boys are. And we really had to go through, how are we going to adapt to having special need kids or kids with learning disabilities or kids with defiance that don't think twice about.
Fast.
And
adapt fast.
Immediately, of course,
and
yes.
In worlds that you are now entering that you probably didn't even know existed.
We could talk about that for 20 podcasts, as you know. I mean, what you didn't know is what you didn't know, right? And that's why I'm grateful for my neighbor that introduced me to you and where we are now based upon the advocacy that you and I both really pushed forward for.
Sure.
But if you're not in a position to be an advocate, maybe English is your second language, or maybe you're in a culture where as a mom, you don't question authority, your kid's going to be left behind, and that's scary. So going through the grief process, I think, is going to be ongoing for us.
Well, yeah, it's so interesting. I'm sorry. And I know for a fact that so many parents experience, and it definitely is closer to early age children. And I do think it gets better as everybody kind of grows together. And this is for, like I was saying before we started recording, for biological children too, because mothers have this terrible guilt.
I bet.
that it's like, what did I do to this child? These are my genes. This child was made in my image. How come this child isn't as perfect and as good at stuff as I am? So what I was originally asking you is, yeah, what is that like from your perspective, knowing that they're adopted? Does that remove that? Do you ever have thoughts of that? Were you even aware that other mothers are kind of feeling responsible for this?
Yes, to everything. I mean, as a gal that came from a pretty middle class background, just, had my master's degree, met a husband as smart as a whip. We have a wonderful life. We just assumed we'd get pregnant and have this perfect kid that would go to Harvard, where we always wanted to go, right? So that didn't happen. And I have friends that have children that are biological children that have anxiety. The mom and dad don't have anxiety, or, they have screen addiction. Where does this come from? And I feel that as a mom of a biological child, that guilt is probably really overwhelming. I made this kid. Where did this kid come from? What in my history caused him to be autistic or anxiety prone? But as an adopted mom, I don't have that guilt. I have fear, right? Fear of how this kid is going to make it in the world. And again, I mentioned I had anger. He didn't ask for this. He didn't ask for his birth mom to choose drugs over a normal pregnancy, which would result in brain damage. The only thing I'm grateful for is that she gave him up and we got him.
Sure.
And we can just, love him to death.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's very hard.
I'm going to cry.
I am too. So we'll just keep on going.
Just get through. Yeah. And like how mad you were at these systems that he was bumping into. And I'm tempted to start this story when I met you, but then I think it's so compelling. And I tell other people bits and pieces of the story, not using your name or any identifiers, but it's always been so compelling to me. And I don't think I even knew. Can you talk a little bit about birth and then how they don't find out about the drugs until after the child's born? And then they say, do you still want this child? And you're like,
could you say
what
no?
do you mean?
I love him for the last 2 days. He's my baby.
This child is a nursery at our house. What do you mean? Of course he's coming home with us.
Exactly. In my older son's case, we were fortunate enough to meet the birth mother a couple of times. And as I look back, there were definitely signs that she was on something. It was just, she wasn't nervous. It was some sort of jitter or, but we were so anxious and nervous for her to fall in love with us that, I probably didn't see the signs. And who knows what would have happened. Maybe we would have backed out. Maybe we would have not. But now here we are.
Right.
So we met her a couple of times and my older son was a preemie. So he was 4 weeks early. And so we got the call, like you see in the commercials, and we flew down there and pacing in the lobby, just like any other grandparent or aunt or uncle would do. And she ended up having a C-section because she had some serious blood loss issues. So that was scary. What was double scary is that she was put on pain meds. And when you adopt a baby in the state that we did, you have 24 hours until you get custody. Now, that's not like the full adoption. That's just as if, a foster kind of scenario. So we couldn't get custody of our son for 3 days because she was on pain meds, thus couldn't make a coherent decision and had a C-section, which is considered a major surgery. So I was scared to death. I mean, I was besties with the nurses at this point, and I just did not want her to bond with my baby, right? I just did not want her to have the time to change her mind.
Oh my God. Sorry, I'm talking over you, which is what I'm not supposed to be doing. But I cannot imagine being as anxious I am about like regular stuff in my day to day. Somebody else could take this child.
Right. So we have a lot of family in the state that we adopted in. So they were like fighting me. They were all coming over. And meanwhile, we had lots of interaction with the baby, with the birth mother. We also had a representation from our attorney. She was like a doula. And we also had a U.S. Marshal in front of her door. Unfortunately, her history with her other children and drug use, she had lost her other 3 children. So the U.S. Marshal was there to just assure that either the baby would become a ward of the state or would be relinquished to us. So after 3 days of pacing and, lower GI issues and overconsumption of carbs, the baby was given to us. And then the world opened up. We got the records, we got the birth story, we got the weight, we got everything. And the baby's meconium, which is their first poop, was heavily just laced with almost everything you can imagine. Opioids, methadone. We knew that the mother was a heavy menthol smoker and caffeine. She loved to drink Red Bulls. And so after those 3 days, you get this sort of report where you're just, I don't know anybody that was addicted to opioids. I get the whole like body umbilical cord baby, right? You feed your baby, but my girlfriends, they didn't drink wine. They just were chased for 9 months. So this was a big shock. And we had to consult with our pediatrician here, as well as, a team of doctors down there. Everybody was like just amazing. So, to your point, you're not going to say no after you get this report because I've been loving this baby for the past 3 days.
Well, but you've been in planning for months.
Right. I mean,
and this was a private adoption, so it's not free.
It was tens of thousands of dollars. And people that give birth don't remember giving birth, right? The pain is gone. So I think that financial pain at that point was just gone. But we were shocked. And, the nurses were like, yeah, we see this a lot. The symptoms of NAS are odd. Like, babies don't yawn because they sleep so much. So the yawning symptom is them sort of stretching, trying to like get their esophagus and their throat like open up for more air. Jaundice is an easy one. My son was a preemie, so that was difficult. But seeing that little IV in a vein in his head that's giving him the methadone to wean off of the drugs that he's been taking for the last 9 months just makes me, it's a very uncomfortable position. And I'm no angel, right? I love my wine, and it's just a different world. And I'm, again, super angry that he was born from that world, and super grateful that he's now in our world. And I mean that including you, because you're part of our extended team. So yeah, that's sort of the initial birth story. And we can talk from birth till now he's 10.
No, I mean, it's just really powerful. And thank you for sharing that with us. Let's jump a little bit to when I met you. You live across the street from my mother's best friend.
Super cool.
You were super random, super cool. You were going through it. You were like, oh my God, I don't know what to say. And you were calm, cool, collected, did everything, did all the hard work, did all the things you were supposed to do, and it still wasn't working. And I think you were like, somebody's got to help me. Somebody's got to step in here. Like, I just cannot with this. I think you were like almost like in shock.
Totally numb. Just super numb.
Just like, I don't even know what the right word is.
Helpless.
You didn't even understand what was happening. You're like, what? I don't even understand what's happening.
My baby was always, we called him Danger Baby. We called him Busy Baby because still to this day, he is going to be either an Olympic gold medalist in gymnast or a Boston Ballet dancer or a Cirque du Soleil dancer. He is just constantly acrobatic. So imagine a toddler doing those kinds of things. Like, it was so common to us. Someone would come over, they'd be just, oh my God, it's just him. It's just him. So, we always, I don't want to say complaints. There was concerns in daycare. There's concerns in preschool. So here we are. My baby is going to kindergarten, just so proud of himself and us and the bus and the this and
excited to go.
Oh my God, dressed in this like amazing Vineyard Vines outfit, little backpack with his name on it.
The beautiful house in the background.
Oh, everything
and
perfect.
He's gorgeous. And he's got his first day of school pictures. And it is literally picture perfect.
It's perfect until the third day of kindergarten, where I find out that he's been taking off his clothes and running around the hall screaming, I want to go home. I want to go home. So, okay, that's new. Didn't really ever experience that kind of nervousness. So finally, for the first time, I hear the words fright or flight. So he feels uncomfortable in the school classroom and is being sort of ostracized to the back of the class in the dumb seat. And okay, all this thing is new and not sure what's happening. Goes on for a couple of weeks, behavior escalates. He torments little girls and trips them and knocks over pencil cups and just making the teacher absolutely crazy. So the principal asked him to leave. And okay, I get that. He's a little bit of a handful. My husband and I are like, well, what do we do? It's his inalienable right for an education. So where do we put him? So he gets dumped in this basement special ed class, and it sounds negative, but it really was. I just am not proud of that at all. Even there, he was not complying. So he spent more time in the principal's office than he did in the classroom. And finally, the principal just kind of said, we need to do something. So I thought, where am I going to send him? Where am I going to put him? I didn't know what to do. I was so numb and I was so embarrassed and I was so sad. And again, your mom's friend, how serendipitous, lives across the street from us. And she's a former teacher and she adores my boys. Her daughter is one of your close friends and mine. And she just came over and she was like, okay, I didn't know what IEP stood for. I didn't know what.
And she's like, oh, well, this is different.
Poor Kelly. What's she going to do?
Very busy. That's how she talks. Because that's how you talk, I guess, when you're a kindergarten teacher for 30 years.
Exactly.
Oh.
So, okay. Well, let's do this. First, sit down and have some lemonade. I'm like, that's not going to make me feel better if there's not vodka in it. Right. So anyways, her daughter came over and I said, I have a new word and it's called an educational advocate. Do you know what that means? And do you know anybody? And she was like, I do. So I remember going to Victoria's website and there's like this big button. If you're in an emergency, I had called you and I emailed you and then there was this button. If you're in an emergency situation, click here. So I did and you called me immediately and we talked about all business, which is how I roll. Like I don't need sympathy. I don't need, oh, poor baby. Did you sign the placement page? Did you make any decisions? Don't do anything with that.
I need to get the facts. I'm like, all facts, Jack, because this is a legal process, right? Mm-hmm. And like you said, he has a right to go to school. This is all outlined in federal law, state regs. And I just need to get the lay of the land. I gotta, before I can even talk anything like history, emotions, feelings. I'm like, where are we at legally? What's our position? And I also, for better or for worse, probably makes me good at my job, but I become indignant at the school district.
You do. In the most professional way. You become
this. I'm like, this is an outrage.
This is unacceptable. This is against the law. We can go to litigation.
Better. They know better. I just get so mad because I was a school person for 20 years. I mean, I still consider myself a school person, even though I haven't been for a little bit. But if I know, they know. And then they're pretending to the parents they don't know. And I'm like, don't do that.
You know what you know. You know they don't know. I mean, it was my husband, rock star, but, kind of like sort of in the back seat, right? Well, I'm like mama bear, like you and I are mama bear.
Which is, I would say 100% of the cases.
I know. But to see my husband so upset that his little boy, who we of course think is perfect, just very busy and energetic, I'm being brutally honest. I mean, he was getting sent to the nurse's office and like smearing poo on the walls. And again, running around. Manic is really the word. Not frantic, not being silly, with just this maniacal laugh.
No, he was next level.
And nobody did anything. Nobody called 911. Nobody called the crisis line. Nobody did anything for him except lock him down in the nurse's office in somebody else's underwear and find me or my husband.
This went on for weeks.
From September to mid-October, Victoria.
And I would also like to add, they continued to send him home, dismiss him.
Correct.
And I'm like, they did what?
Yeah.
Because that's not what you're supposed to do, because they knew this child was in crisis.
Correct.
I think they knew his backstory, or they could have easily found it out at that point by making one phone call. And they just didn't do a good job.
Yeah, they wanted him gone.
Yeah, and I don't know, I wonder this, and every time I come across a case where a kid's in real crisis, like, what is happening at that school? Do they really not know? Are they not equipped with this? But at this point, I'm like, don't they have enough experience to know how to do the right thing? I don't know.
I don't know either. And I'm an advocate for preaching about neonatal abstinence syndrome, which unfortunately is still very, very clouded in secrecy. Doctors don't know about it, but we've known for years about fetal alcohol syndrome, which is similar. You're not supposed to drink while you're pregnant.
That school people, especially non-special ed folks, which is administrators, a lot of the time are non-special ed people.
Yeah.
And if you're just a regular, you were like a gym teacher or a history teacher, and now you're a principal, you don't know anything about this stuff. So there could be some like inner dynamics that happen at the school, which is like not what we're here to talk about today, that like get in the way of these kids getting what they need, because, now you're in a therapeutic setting where everybody knows about all of these things, which is exactly where he belongs. But at the time you were in a regular, tiny little elementary school.
In my town, that I grew up in, that I was so proud to be at because it's really a great school. And let's be honest, I didn't want to burn a bridge because I have another son in the district.
Sure. By the way, these are through lines through almost all of my cases. All the things.
Sorry to hear that. Yeah, I hear that too, just from like some of my parent groups, just regardless of where you are, whether it's Massachusetts or even national. So maybe the next generation of educators and principals will be more aware.
I think they're working on it.
I hope so.
I think they're working on it, but I don't know. I have a wait and see approach to if it's going to get better, really better. Okay, so.
We're sitting in a basement. We're sitting in a special ed class where it's completely inappropriate for him to be there. He does not have Down syndrome. He's not nonverbal. He's toilet trained. This was sort of a dumping ground, which is a whole nother topic that I'm super embarrassed about for my town. So we call Victoria. She gets right on it. She is familiar with my school district. She is treating me like the mom I want to be treated like. She's listening. You are taking notes. I hear your brain moving because now that I know you, I'm like, we're so alike. I hear your brain churning. And she's telling me what to do because up until this point, I was freaking clueless. I was just doing what everybody told me to do, the schools, the teachers, the town, other moms. And finally, I have someone telling me, don't do this, do this, don't do this. This is your right. This is not right.
Say this, don't say that. Say this, don't sign that. All emails are CC'd to me. Don't miss
everything
anything.
Is like, stop.
Lock it up.
Lock it up. Stop the communication. So I don't know the process because my process was so different. But just knowing you these past 5 years, I know that what happened with us was completely serendipitous and ultimate, almost miracle. Victoria called this person, outlined what was going on with the Frenches, and she had known us because she was getting engaged with these meetings. She would come to the school. It'd be me, Henry, her, the principal, and she would dismiss us and say negative things right in front of Henry. And I mean, he's 5. He doesn't know what he's doing. So we'd scoop him up. So my husband lost his job over this. I definitely suffered in my job. We were at the school 2-3 times a day, just trying to, calm him down. I went to lunch with him. I would walk him in. I would walk him out. They kicked him out of aftercare. It was just.
Oh my God, that's like a whole other thing.
Yeah, a whole other thing.
And it is for everybody. In transportation, people don't understand how much this impacts lives, livelihoods, families, marriages, the whole thing.
Right. And then
you don't escape unscathed.
No. And you're so mortified, right? I mean, mortified of the janitor cleaning up the nurse's office. You know what I mean? I'm devastated. Like, this is my baby. I mean, I'm not mad at him because he's 5 and obviously something's wrong. I'm like, what the heck is going on? We still don't know per se, but we're getting there. So, we had a bunch of meetings and we looked at the opportunity to send Henry to another school. You and I found a couple. You had some prior experience with some therapeutic schools. Now, keep in mind, Chris, my husband and I, we didn't know what a therapeutic school was.
Right.
A special school.
I think Chris was like, no.
He was.
A regular kindergarten. I was like, okay. No. Yeah, we'll think about that.
So he's still in my kid can shake this off. Yeah. My kid can shake this off.
But it doesn't know him and everybody else, because some people adapt to this quicker and some are not adapted yet. Right. So there's no way to force the accepting of what's happening. That's not something that can be forced.
It can't be. I mean, it comes when it comes, and it hasn't come yet.
Yeah, right. And this can be about medication or placements or different types of schools. You probably said to me, and other people have said to me, like, how do you know? And I'm like, because you've tried everything and you need to try something new. You've tried everything that you wanted to try. Now you're going to try something maybe you didn't want to try. And
that's it. And that's where we needed a guide, an advocate.
It's inevitable.
Someone on our side. It's inevitable.
If a kid's going to go to a placement and can't make it, it's going to work itself out. It's inevitable. That's how you're going to get there. Now, my job is how to do it correctly, get to the right placement, and kind of speed that up, especially when I see things going wrong that are not supposed to be happening.
And that's why I call the relationship that we built a miracle.
This was just egregious, and I just was heartbroken for him and you guys. And the story is so moving, which I'm sure everybody tells you. The neuropsych that you had done is they just cared so much about him and were so good about writing that exactly the way it needed to be done. And I still have a relationship with them because it started with this case, which was amazing. Because this is a complicated case.
It is.
I mean, and NAS is complicated. issue. And you caught it right at the very beginning of school. So under these circumstances, he had really best case scenario for his education because we moved everything so fast.
Yeah. And there was a lot of steps before that. I mean, when you first got engaged, remember we moved him to that school across town with that new principal.
So let's talk about that for a minute.
Okay. So Victoria gets engaged.
This is a good lesson for all parents, because I also say this to everybody all the time. If the district wants to offer an in-district placement, I oftentimes will be like, I know it's not going to work, but because of what we call least restrictive environment, I'll say, yeah, sure, let's try it.
Yeah. So that's what we did. We moved him to a little tiny school across town. Couldn't have been further away from where we live, but it was good because it was like a fresh start, right? I mean, fresh start. The female principal was lovely. The special ed teacher was caring and nurturing, and her husband was a firefighter, and he would come over, and, the kids loved it. It was a great environment. But Henry he's smarter than the average learning disabled child. Henry is behaviorally. Is that right? Am I saying that right?
Yeah. No, okay. Totally. Henry is different. He doesn't need an environment where things are for kids who have intellectual impairment.
Right.
And he doesn't only need just typical behavioral interventions, and he doesn't need just regular autism interventions.
Right.
He didn't fit into one box.
Right.
And I think that second school really wanted to help and was trying. And they were like, no, we do this all the time. We can figure it out. And you and I were like,
you can't. Yeah.
I don't think so. But yeah, I mean, take your best shot.
Yeah. And he really thrived there. And he was in a class of special need kids that were very vibrant and fun. And he participated.
And that teacher was great.
Oh my God. She was great. And I see her around town, and I know she doesn't remember me, but I just look at her I know.
Don't be so
I remember.
Sure.
I know, right? And he participated in the Special Olympics that year. I mean, he was really thriving until he wasn't, right? So this was sort of a honeymoon period for a bunch of months.
A honeymoon period that happens at the beginning, right? Yep. Of every placement.
He's in a new environment. He's happy. They're paying attention to him. There was like 12 kids in the class versus the 26. And then he's like, okay, this is boring. And when Henry gets bored, he gets destructive. So back in the principal's office, sitting time with her, and that
more
just
dismissals.
Isn't. Oh my God, constant. And remember, I said he was across town, and it was like,
yeah.
You're depending upon the time. I'm working. You got to get an hour to get there. You got to go through the whole rigmarole. Yeah. Okay, he did this. Yep. Bring him home and then entertain him because he's 5. He can't entertain himself like a teenager that's suspended can do. So back to Victoria. We had a meeting, and I don't know if you remember this, but you were there in person, and they had a fire drill, and you and I were like, this is ridiculous. I hate it here. So we had a great meeting, and you were just like, listen, this is done. You've got to go to auto placement. And I'm like, what does that mean? What do you mean auto placement? My baby's not going anywhere besides right here. And you kind of confirmed what that meant. As a parent of someone that's just assumed they would go through the public school system, because I pay taxes, you're like, no, it's more than this, and this is why. So we had a couple of meetings about schools, and you put some packages together, and we took some tours. Here we are.
The rest is history.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we picked the school. We talked to the director. We talked to the principal. They want us to come visit. I want to visit the kindergarten class. They say no. I call you. Voila, they say yes. So we go to visit the school, and we're having this wonderful meeting, and I'm like crying, and I'm not a crier, but I'm just thinking, how could my kid come to the school in downtown Boston? Like, how could I send this 5-year-old on a van all the way into the city? Like, I can't do it. So just fell in love with the staff. Like, it's just what he needed. They were just all so therapy-ish, just very welcoming, and talk to him like a little boy. Hi, nice to see you, that kind of thing. Another super funny moment is they told us about the tuition, and I just looked at Chris, and he looked at me, and we just lost it. And then in the car, we were like, how are we going to do this? And we will, you just make it happen. I'll ask my mom, I'll, drain my 401k. And I called you, and you were like, what? No. You are getting what you need from this school and not from the district. So what will happen is the district will approve the tuition and send your son, including transport, to this school. And I just thought, oh my God, I'm falling in love with Victoria all over again. Like, I just didn't even think that was a thing. We're sending my kid to a therapeutic private school where he's going to get hopefully everything he needs, because this is the one we picked. Smaller classes and occupational therapy and healthy
and
lunch,
after school programs,
and summer and
transportation.
Yesterday he went to launch. Today he's Barn Babies is coming, the little creatures,
Excellent.
again, included in the tuition. That was a very funny moment. My husband was he felt like he lost 100 pounds not paying tuition. But, we would have done whatever it took. If you said, go to this school, you got to pay for it, and we would have. But knowing that it's the law that the school district, if they cannot provide what your kid needs and you need to go somewhere else to get it, they need to provide that. And we were just so grateful for you to negotiate that. And
it was my pleasure, honestly, obviously.
But the bottom line is, the second he went to his new school, things started to change. And we had such bad PTSD, my husband and I. You go from all these phone calls every single day to no phone calls. I'm like, what's going on? What's going on? Because silence in my house is bad, right?
I think that's the most helpful to a lot of people, because they're like, oh my God, I just got a call. Like, what? I think in their head, they're like, oh my God, I don't know how to answer this question. And I'm like, you got to call me. Yeah. Like, actually, at the beginning of a case, I want to know every detail.
That's right. And that only makes you stronger, makes you more of a team player for us. And I still call you for IEP meetings. And, there's things that pop up with Henry that are going to be challenging. We talked about a residential facility for him when he gets older. What's going to happen after the 10th grade, after the therapeutic school? So we'll need you then too, because being a teenager.
All kids are covered from their, third birthday until they're 22 years old. So we got a ways to go, Cal.
12 years. Oh my God, imagine. Can't even imagine what's going to happen 12 years from now. They're always doing something if they're silent. No, you get your clinician and you get your floor director, and they don't call you because they handle it. And then it becomes, they don't even have to handle it because the behavior is not there anymore. So, my kid is reading, he's doing geometry, he's doing talent show, he's doing coding and making Roblox games. He is not perfect, which is why he's there. And he's got a lot of behavioral challenges outside of his very protected, cloistered school. But my kid's reading and writing and coding and
amazing.
Crazy good.
He's doing amazing. And I remember the first IEP meeting. You're like, is that it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's it. You're like, we're done now? Yep.
It was like 45 minutes, not 3 hours. And I didn't cry once. And I think another sort of benefit of working with you, Victoria, is that individual therapy piece that you probably unknowingly provide. So when I'm ready to jump off the bridge, you kind of pull me back and say, well, let's just review this. I just want to talk about the IEP meetings where I get kind of anxious because my kid is doing so well at school that I feel like they're going to kick him out. And you're like, no. It's all good. And your Victoria voice, no, it's all good. It's just a check-in. He still needs the supports. He needs OT. He needs this. He's not getting kicked out. I'm like, whew, because he's doing so well. That would just devastate us. So he's there. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. And you're welcome. I think there's a lot of parent coaching and there's a lot of teaching. You learned a ton through this process.
And
now you're giving advice to other parents.
I hope so.
Did you ever think that was going to happen? However many years ago that was?
Yeah, 5.
When you were
now I feel like a rock star on my mom call, The older moms give me advice. I give advice to the newcomers. And it's
awesome.
Who knew this would be my lot in life is really thinking of that day in the hospital. We got custody of my kid. And now here I am sort of being kind of a subject matter expert, sort of. It's
managing it on the day to day. Totally.
Right.
And I think that that's what my goal for this whole doing this podcast is that I think that moms and sometimes dads are alone with this burden. They might be at the extreme beginning of it and they really have no idea. They're just so overwhelmed and so sad and don't know who to talk to.
And scared. And there's a lot of people that still don't know Henry's birth story. And I choose who to tell, right? I choose.
Sure. As is his right and yours.
Of
for
course,
privacy.
Right? And then there's other people that know it and they're like, is he better yet? I'm like, he's never going to be better.
He's fixed, cured.
He's never going to be better, right?
Antibiotics.
So what you see, can you imagine? Give me a Z-Pack, I'm all set. It's really life-changing. You have this kid and your mom, and that's life-changing. But then to have sort of a learning disabled or a behavioral challenged kid, you lose friends. I'm just being honest. People don't want to be around you. They don't want to be around your kid. They think he's weird. You make new friends in this sort of new special needs community, and who knew this would be my life?
And there are still successes.
Oh, of course. Oh, my God.
And they feel just as good, but they look different.
Correct.
Than what you thought they were going to look like.
Correct.
So when you're at the beginning of this and you're like, this is never going to be good. This is never going to feel good. This is never going to be good. Nobody's ever going to be happy again.
My kid's never going to school. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's always going to be bad. It's not.
No.
I mean, it's hard to get through and to
so
manage
what is the
ongoing.
moral of that story? How you and I can like make this sort of like a teaching moment, right? I mean, maybe it's ask for help, because if I didn't ask for help and raise my hand to your mom's best friend, to her daughter, I wouldn't have found you. We wouldn't have been at Henry's new school. My other son wouldn't be reading, So what's the moral of the story? It really is ask for help. It's embarrassing. It's scary. It's shameful. But what I learned is that tons of stuff is lots of kids have something. Everybody has something, right? And if a mom is perfect on Facebook, question that, because I don't think anybody is perfect.
Your pictures are pretty perfect.
To be honest with you, I look at those and I go, this is kind of fake, because 5 seconds ago, my son was trying to drown my other son in the pool in Mexico. You know what I mean? It's like every parent, we have perfect moments and we have imperfect moments, and Facebook's for perfect. And the little victories of being able to go to a movie and not have my kids run around by the end of it, or, there's all kinds of things that make me so happy to be in this family. And unfortunately, we don't talk about the good stuff enough. So,
and the big picture story of like, where would Henry be if he wasn't with you?
Well, to be honest, that could be something you and I need to discuss over margaritas, because I don't go down that road that much.
Yeah.
I really don't.
Yeah.
So,
it's hard to think about.
It's hard to think about. I told the story about the marshal outside the mother's room. My son would have been taken away from her and us and put into the system. Like, who knows? This kid has brain damage. Like, where would he have been if not with us and the coaching and the love and the guidance? Or what if the mom didn't decide to do what she did and chose another route, which I completely support, either one.
But there's a million ways that this could have not come together like this. And I think that that's like, religious or not, like, I just think you're doing the Lord's work here.
Praise the Lord. Yeah, no, I do. I am not religious. Sometimes I miss that. I think, like, if I had a higher power, would I pull from that? But I pull from my friends and my family and my team. You got to just build a team. You got to share and you got to talk and you got to be open. It's not about you. It's not about your marriage. It's about your kid.
And I think if you're feeling shame, that can be the hardest of all the emotions. And if you can just break through enough that shame to ask for help and tell people what's going on, there is help available.
There is help available. Yep. There are support groups. There are family members. Like, everybody has a thing. So just find your village.
And like, be honest, right? Isn't that like another good rule? Like, be honest about yourself and be honest about your kid, because it's not going to get fixed unless we talk openly and honestly about what's going on. I think for a lot of really good reasons, people aren't super excited to share every detail of this. That's embarrassing. But if you don't get it out enough so that we can get to the root of it, then it's not going to get solved.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about that at the beginning with maternal moms. Like, get over it. Just mobilize. You can't go back. You've got this baby. They need you. Mobilize. Move forward. And now, you bring in COVID. That's a whole nother topic of, sort of what's happening in the world with these babies. I don't know if my kids are wrapped up in that or they were too young. We'll see. Who knows what that will do. But I do feel that even sort of neurotypical kids had a really hard time just being so alone and separated. Who knows what that's going to yield.
Right, exactly. All right. So let's attempt to end on a high note. What was your happiest / proudest moment with your son that you can think of this year? I don't care if it was school or when he was on vacation, something he did that really made you feel like so proud of him.
I have a great one because it just happened. So Henry's school gives awards at the end of the year, and they always do a theme. So this year was Toy Story. Henry won the Woody Sheriff Award because he is a natural leader. He's funny. He makes friends easily. They said in this little speech that he's the kid that when a new kid comes in, they ask him to walk around and show him where the locker is and where the lunchroom is. They do sort of this buddy mentor thing for a week. So my heart was so full to think that my son is now taking a leadership role in 4th grade and helping his teachers and being called a sheriff. And he was so proud. He stood up there for like 5 minutes so everyone could take his picture. I'm like, buddy, come on. It was very, very sweet and motivating. And we made a big deal about it. And he was just so proud. I mean, oh my God. And they had the plaque like already engraved. And yeah.
I love that.
So happy to hear that. Yep. Me too.
Well, Kelly, it's a pleasure.
Always.
Usual. Thank you for letting me be part of this journey. Thank you for coming on today. Thank you for helping other parents.
My
Thank you
pleasure.
for fighting the good fight. And I
Till
hope
next
that
time.
lots of people listen. Yeah,
Me
totally.
too. Me too.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for listening to Laugh, Cry, IEP with Victoria Crisp. We hope it has given you inspiration and a sense that you are not alone. In fact, we'd love to have you join the Laugh, Cry, IEP community on Facebook. It's a free group for moms like you. You can also learn how to work with Victoria in the group or on her website, crispeducationadvising.com. Both links are in the show notes for you. Until next time, please share the show with your friends or anyone you think may need this message. And remember, we are always on your side.